point about climate change is that we actually know it's happening. We're all feeling it. All this wet weather, the very hot summers that we have. And we in Britain are very lucky because it's nothing like as bad as it is in many other parts of the world. Just at this very moment, there are flooding in countries that have really not had it before. There are temperatures which are quite impossible to work in or to live in India, in Africa, in much of Asia. So what we've got here tells us just how difficult it is, but it's nothing like as bad as in the rest of the world, nor is it anything like as bad as it's going to become, because every year it gets worse, unless we do something about it. And that's the crucial issue. We can do something about it. And young people in particular have really got to help push the older generation to take the action they need to take. We've got to work in Britain to get our emissions down to what's called net zero. That means removing all the emissions that we put into the atmosphere, all that carbon we produce in an industrial world. Stopping putting that into the atmosphere where it is changing our climate. And it also means helping the world to put its own house in order. You see, what we've done is to make it much more difficult for the Earth to take in that carbon that we shove into the atmosphere. By the way we farmed, by the plastics we put into the ocean, by the fact that we still allow ships to trawl the bottom of the ocean. And that, of course, releases carbon instead of taking it in. So net zero is about both those things, cutting our emissions and making it easier for the world to heal itself. And we all have to do that, and if we all do it, we will defeat climate change. We will keep the increase in temperatures down to a level which we can manage, and then we will begin to get that increase down even further. But we'll only do that if every nation fights to get net zero. Britain is committed by law to do it, and young people need to help to force politicians to do what needs to be done. And if we do that, then we'll succeed. And if we don't, then we'll fail. So 3 things for every young person to do. First of all, make an appointment with your local Member of Parliament. During election time, make sure you go to the meetings of Members of Parliament and the other candidates and ask what they're doing. Are they committed to net zero in 2050? Are they going to fight for Britain to reduce its emissions and improve its farming and the way in which it deals with the seas so that we can let the earth heal itself? Push, make sure your voice is heard. It's surprising about politicians, they really do listen to young people if young people put themselves forward. Your Members of Parliament, when there isn't an election, will have surgeries. Book a place there. Go along and explain why the Member of Parliament has got to be much tougher about climate change. The second thing you can do is, when you get to the age of voting, you can look and see what the candidates, not just the parties, but the candidates, your candidates, what they're saying. Are they really going to fight climate change? And you can press them. That's the democratic way forward. And then the third thing, and this really comes before everything, each one of us has to do what we can do to reduce our impact on the planet. We do that, not only ourselves individually, but we've got to set an example to other people. Of course, we're getting our families and our friends, getting the sports clubs that we belong to, the schools in which we are, the universities to which we go, getting them to do what needs to be done, because we're all in this together. And if I were asked what each individual should be looking at, it's very small things. We should look at everything we do through the lens of climate change. So if we want a cup of coffee and we boil a kettle, we just boil enough for the cup, not the full kettle. We use less water and less electricity. If we're cleaning our teeth, we don't let the water run, because one of the big costs of water is the energy that's needed to pump it round the system. And we're going to be very short of water in the hot periods of the year and have far too much water in the wet periods of the year. So we've got to get on top of this. Whatever we do, we should be asking ourselves, how do we do this in a way which doesn't cost the earth? I'm not asking anybody to be cold, or not to travel, or not to do the things they want to do. What I am asking is that they don't do it in a way which damages the future. No one should be more concerned about that than young people, because it's in your lifetime that the world could come to a point at which we destroy everything which we most care about. We destroy the biodiversity that we have inherited. We make it impossible for the birds and the beasts and the animals of all sorts and the insects to live. And actually, we make it pretty difficult for ourselves. So we must act, and act now. It is urgent, and every single one of us can take our part by looking at the world through the lens of climate change, making decisions through that lens, and above all, having done those things so that we can set an example, going out to all the organisations that we know of and are associated with, also above all, pressing our members of parliament to take the action they need to take. It's in their hands. The law says they must do it, and whether they're Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, Welsh Nationalist or any other party which has committed itself to net zero, we've got to press them to deliver on what they promised.